the California Mesa statewide team. So it's really nice to have you all today. I'm very excited about today's panel. This was the largest response we've got when we sent out the information on the panel, which means I know everyone's super excited to join and listen to our awesome folks. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you haven't already, please go ahead and turn your cameras on. I know our speakers love to see your faces if you have the ability to do so. Also, this will be a conversation, so we'll be asking for information in the chat, as well as if you have questions, I encourage you to use the Q&A function, so that way we can track your questions. There will be an opportunity to ask questions off mute later in the panel, but for now, to make sure we track your questions, please use the Q&A function. If you can't figure that out, you're welcome to put them in the chat. And myself and our team will be monitoring that for you. Also, please make sure to change your name to your first name, last name, and what school you're attending, or if you're an alum. And this will be our last virtual panel for the year, for the calendar year, but we intend to have more of them since we've had such a great response and feedback from them in the early next calendar year. If you have suggestions or are really interested in a certain topic for us to put a panel together or have a speaker on, please send us a message on MESASpace. You can message myself. I'm actually under MESA statewide in MESASpace. You can message Danielle or Marvin or go ahead and put it in the chat, and we will use that to help us plan for our additional panels in early next year. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started by introducing our moderator for the panel today. Felicia James. She's a MESA board member, so we are thrilled that she could join us today as our moderator. And Felicia is the vice president at Carollo Engineers. She joined MESA as a high schooler in Sacramento, and she holds a bachelor degree in civil engineering from Stanford and a master's in civil engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. She works with water and wastewater utilities to develop and implement business strategies to establish risk-based prioritization and spending needs for maintaining and renewing infrastructure. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Felicia. Thank you, Felicia.
Great. Thank you, Mindy. It's good to have everybody here. I'm excited to have this panel discussion about getting a professional engineering license, and it's great to see so much interest. I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, beginning with Cheyenne.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cheyenne Butcher. I'm a licensed civil engineer in California. I'm employed with Brown and Caldwell as a civil engineer working on a mix of pipeline, pump station, and program management projects. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Michael.
Good afternoon, Michael Marchand. Actually, my PE is in the mail, if you will, but I've applied for it. I passed my test and just awaiting the board to pretty much issue my professional engineering license. From Louisiana, UCF, LSU, Go Tigers. So relocated to the Bay Area probably in the last 5 years. And just in Louisiana in the South, we didn't need PEs. It wasn't that as prevalent as it is in California. So relocating here, identifying the need and the prestige of having a professional engineering license is what directed me to get one. And so now I currently work for WSP as a consultant. Work on a bunch of, well, not a bunch, but work for BART as a consultant. Right now we're working on replacing the Powell Street substation. So if you're familiar with San Francisco BART stations, you need a substation almost every mile just to feed the power to the third rail, which powers the train. So that's one of my primary projects is, again, working with substations, empowering trains and light rail systems. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oren.
Hi, everyone. My name is Oren Rieger. I work for Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. They're located up the hill from UC Berkeley. Been there about 11 years. Before that, I was a design consultant doing in the construction industry as a mechanical engineer. Yeah, happy to tell you guys all sorts of information about the PE.
Well, fantastic. Looking forward to having this discussion with you all. We're going to talk about the journey towards getting a PE. I think Michael will have the most recent experience on that. The value of a professional engineering license, a PE, And what are some of the obligations that come with holding a PE? So the first question, and I would say if there are other questions, you guys from the audience, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A section. So my first question will be, how soon after graduating did you begin your PE application process? And I'll start with Oren.
So I graduated from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and I think that it's been a while now, but I think before you graduate, they actually have a program to launch you into it used to be called the EIT, and I think now it's called the FE. It's the
Fundamentals.
pre PE test. So that process started in college, like sophomore or maybe junior year even. Um, and then, yeah, you can't take the PE until you've had some work experiences, as you guys probably know. So it takes a while after that.
All right, thanks. Cheyenne?
I similar to as Oren just described, except I took the fundamentals of engineering exam probably a month after I graduated, and then because I had just a bachelor's degree, I needed a little bit more work experience. So probably 6 months after I graduated, that's when I started the process to take the national exam and then work through the California specific stuff later.
Michael, how about you?
Yeah, so I would say with the electrical engineering background, so graduating college, we too were advised or kind of encouraged to go and take the FE exam. So I came out of college in 2006. So I take that exam, and I didn't want to become a PE at the time, but just you need to work under a licensed engineer, or at least have licensed engineers kind of be a reference for you. And I just didn't have that in the South. So coming to California, what I have noticed and identified, and this is just what I think I would say would be good advice, is that you're already in a study mode, right? So definitely knock the FE out, the fundamental engineering exam. But in California, from an electrical engineering perspective, I don't know about civil because you have the seismic portion. You can take your PE whenever you want after you pass the FE exam. So for myself, I just took my test 2 months ago, but it was 6 months of me studying and knocking cobwebs off of my brain, right? Because I haven't studied in over a decade, right? But because you're conditioned right now to study, I would encourage you to study those things. You may not have the experience to apply for your license. The experience will come over time. But while you're hopefully not a whole lot of obligations, workload isn't extremely heavy, I think this would be an ideal time to study. And what it does for you as well is it sharpens your tools on things that you may see in your experience while you're working. So I would say right now, while you're in grind mode, pass the FE, turn around, start setting for your PE, and get it knocked out. Again, civil may be a little different, but for electrical, that would be my advice.
It's great feedback, great advice. If for those in the audience, if you have taken or are planning to take the Fundamentals of Engineering exam, the FE, put a thumbs up in the chat. So speaking of that, and I think you've already kind of, Michael, given a hint on this, what other advice would you have for those who are considering this process of going towards their FE and the PE? Oren?
I would definitely get involved with whatever your school can help you with. There's usually group classes and after hours things that are structured with you and a bunch of other studying in a group was great. Actually, make friends and learn a lot, and you can bounce ideas off each other, which I'm sure everyone's doing already. But it was really helpful for studying for big tests to do that. So I'd say get involved with what your school offers.
How about you, Cheyenne?
As an extension of that, if once you do graduate and you end up being employed somewhere, lean on your coworkers to see if there's a repository of study resources and that sort of thing, or other people that are maybe in the process to build out your community as well. I'm the type, I highly recommend some sort of either review course or study course, if that is available to you, particularly for me with the California specific seismic and surveying exams. I didn't have a whole lot of detail to work on from my college coursework. So those sorts of review courses helped supplement what I needed to learn to be able to be prepared and pass those respective exams. So long story short, just find your community and lean on those around you so you don't have to go sifting through a lot of information yourself.
That's a great point. And one of the other questions I have is how much time did you spend studying for the PE exam? I know for those in school may not want to hear additional study, but rather you're not blindsided or shocked by it. Shane, you want to start, and then we'll go with Owen and then Michael.
Yeah, I'll start, and I'd say my situation is a little atypical in that I spread out the process over probably about 3 years total due to various things. But I went to grad school in the middle of it, so it was really unfeasible to study for an exam and focus on coursework and actual work at the same time. So putting all that to the side, let's say I spent for the California specific exams probably 3 to 6 months of studying, anywhere from 3 hours a week at the beginning of that process to probably 10 hours a week as it got closer to exam time. So it was a huge time commitment, and definitely my free time went out the window closer to exam date. But I think it's the long-term dividends of being licensed and the recognition you get in that pays off. So you can sacrifice some time commitments for a up to 6 month period if that's how long it takes you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Oren,
How
do you
long?
remember?
It's been a while since I studied for that. Um, over a decade. I think it was probably pretty similar. I remember we would have many late nights. In the consulting firm I worked for, we would gather around a table and all study together. And it was at least 3 months of that on a regular basis. Yeah.
Right. And again, I appreciate Cheyenne's comment about resources as far as taking the prep classes and things of that nature. In college, I was, I guess, arrogant, if I will, but I thought I was smart and didn't need tutoring or didn't need support and help. But just imagine a group of people who have put together a collective of material and information to help you pass the test. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth investing the money and finances into that. And as far as my study schedule, I invested in that, and I really appreciated the course that I went through. And 6 months was my time. And again, I'm 42 years old, wife, daughter who's amazing. So you have life that's pulling on you, and just trying to manage and balance your time is very challenging. But one of the big takeaways during the studying is to look at this as a marathon and not a sprint. Meaning, if you're studying, say, 2 hours a day, that's great, but you need to run that 8 hour marathon, hopefully once a week. So every Saturday, my wife was taking my daughter somewhere so I could have the house to myself for 8 hours to do a practice test. And that's how long this test is for electrical. I know, again, civil has multiple days worth of testing, but an 8 hour test is not anything that we're used to doing or used to taking. So make sure you condition yourself, condition your brain and your mind to sit still and to focus for an 8 hour window, which can be very challenging.
You bring up some really, really good points, and I think it'd be helpful to explain to everybody. So we're talking about, so while the fundamentals of engineering exam is going to be the same across disciplines, once you're going towards your professional engineering license, it's going to vary and be specific to your discipline. So we have represented an electrical, PE, civil, and mechanical. So Michael has just explained, the 8 hour exam for electrical, or and maybe you can explain also for the mechanical. I'll jump in and, for Cheyenne and it's taking the civil engineering exam and then also a seismic exam and also a surveying exam. And I think what Orange described, getting into a group and studying when you can do that, when you get into the workforce and you may be in a situation where you have peers that are at the same level as you, and so you can go on that path together and share that experience. Taking the classes, I'd say I would also add, because I took it late as well for California. I was like Michael, I came in from out of state. Um, Also reach out to your coworkers because you may not have to buy new study books. They may be available, and we shared them around the office until they got too old to be helpful, and then it was time to buy a new set. But definitely you want to take advantage of those who are around you as well. Michael, for the mechanical engineering license and the exam, is it also an 8-hour exam? You recall?
For the mechanical one, it's also an 8-hour exam, yes, but
Hmm.
it's just a single
It's a
a
single.
single exam. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see. Other questions I have. This one may be straightforward, but I think it's worth asking. Is how did you decide which engineering discipline to pursue? Was it 100% based on your degree, or was there another decision-making process that you went through? Oh, Michael.
Um, so I would say it was largely due to the degree that I had.
Hmm.
But what I do identify is that I actually thought about maybe going for traffic, right? I thought maybe traffic would be an easier exam, the path of least resistance, if you will.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it gives you so many more options if you leverage your degree with the PE on top of it. And honestly, it was something that when I graduated college, it was a career goal of mine. And just when I felt like it wasn't achievable, I allowed it to fall to the wayside. So I really do appreciate relocating to California and reigniting that desire and that goal to become a licensed engineer.
Great. Oren, how about you?
I'd say the determination to actually be licensed was definitely driven by the industry I joined, which is kind of cutting into one of your later questions there. But
Hmm.
not all mechanical engineers need the PE license, or need. Um, it's not part of the industry in some cases, but in the construction industry, which is what I ended up getting into out of college, it was required. So the FE was a fundamental thing that prepped me getting out of college, and then I happened to get a job in the construction industry, and then that led into the PE. Things could have turned out different, but that's how it happened for me.
Okay, but you chose mechanical versus civil, for example.
Yes, that was definitely degree based.
Okay,
A mechanical engineer goes for the mechanical degree,
yeah,
and civil engineer goes for civil. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. Cheyenne, you have anything to add on that?
For me, it was degree based, but I will note I have colleagues who went to school for mechanical engineering. They're licensed mechanical engineers and worked for 15 years doing civil engineering work and subsequently got licensed in civil. So that is an option down the line based on the nature of the work you're doing or even personal interests. If you want to get licensed in multiple disciplines, that's available as well.
That's a good tip. So that's kind of we've talked about the journey towards getting PE. Let's see. It looks like there's a question in the chat. Ah. I'm going to go ahead and read this one. If you're a mechanical engineer studying for the P exam, what subject matter is on the exam? That's a very detailed question. And for example, there might be civil engineering questions or circuits and aerospace questions, physics, calculus, etc. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely more focused on mechanical things.
mhm.
There's a little bit of overlap. Like there's probably going to be maybe some motor questions that overlap with electrical a little bit. Um, things of that nature. But the FE very general, and the particular discipline exam is more focused on that discipline. so that you shouldn't get any like aerospace questions on the mechanical
Right.
test.
But I think on the civil, you might get some transportation questions. So talking about the value of a PE, and I'll begin, Cheyenne, with you on this one. Was the PE required for your current job?
I'd say it was required to advance in my current job, particularly given the work that I do on municipal water, wastewater systems. In order to advance in my career, it was fully expected that I get licensed. There was an option to move into other career paths. I'll use construction management as an example, where you don't necessarily need to be licensed, but I knew that wouldn't be the end all be all track for me. So in my case, it was required to be licensed.
Okay. Oren, I think you may have answered this one already, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's not required. There's definitely people who continue through their career without ever getting the license, even though they have the degree. It is definitely expected, and definitely puts you, in a different tier as far as job interviewing and getting hired. So it's pretty important, but things happen. Some people don't qualify if they have like international bachelor degrees or things like that, and there's some other reasons. So there's a career path for not having it, but I would strongly encourage getting it.
Mhm. And then Michael, you said that when you transferred to California, you started that process. Was it because of your job, or was that just the motivation?
So a little bit of both, and I didn't have to get my PE, but to be respected within the industry, I think you had to have a PE. And ultimately, the PE is about accountability and responsibility. So, like Shan said, working for the people, or the citizens, and as engineers, we're servants, right? So we're designing things, we're building things to serve the greater good, and you need to take ownership of that. And the PE is a way to do so, to say, hey, look, I've done my training through college. I have the years of experience, and I am going to be held accountable for what I do. And again, it speaks volumes. But uh, to the core of the question, I wouldn't be able to advance and be promoted within my organization without it. So that was the main driver. But
Mhm.
also, just again, just the respect of being acknowledged. It's almost like a lawyer going to law school and never passing the bar, right? Like you can still do work in the law field, but you can't go before a judge and argue a case. And with our PE license, we can actually go to court and testify on behalf of clients based on our engineering expertise.
I appreciate that. That's good insight. I think you've all. Was going to ask a question about what value have you experienced in your job from the PE. I think you touched on it, but maybe if you want to add anything more on how having a PE has impacted your career. Chan?
I would say my employer has a policy of when you get a license, you get a pretty substantial pay increase immediately. So that was wonderful, and that just really demonstrated the value of what having a PE means to the company, is that they pay it forward by literally paying you more. So I appreciated that, in addition to reimbursing for the testing costs, application costs, things of that nature, so that there's an immediate financial benefit from that. I think additionally, maybe in a non-financial context, there was more advancement and growth opportunities because I got licensed. So I think the nature of being able to eventually promote within my company and advance up the career ladder was beneficial to my overall career development, just because I demonstrated I was willing to get licensed and put in the work and effort to do so.
Good. Oren? Thanks.
Um, yeah, it was. I think I had the same thing happen where we got like a promotion right away, basically. There's two different. I was talking before about not taking the licensing test, so you would be called like a designer, which is one way, and then otherwise you're an engineer. So there were like two paths, and they split, and there was a salary bump, and then also you had other opportunities with being an engineer. So it was pretty impactful.
Great, great. Well, and you bring up a good point. In California, to be called an engineer, in most cases, you have to have a professional engineering license. So to don that title of engineer, capital E, you need the PE. There are some exceptions to that, but it's part of the rules for the state and the licensing board on that. There was a question in the chat about, does your PE title transfer internationally? Um, Different countries may treat this differently, but coming into the United States, the the PE is handled on a state by state basis. So, like Michael is coming in from, I think you said Louisiana to California. Um, he's getting his license in California. You would then need to also, if you were going back to Louisiana or going to another state, you said Louisiana doesn't have a PE, so not all states do. Um, but if you were going to work in another state, you'd have to follow that state's rules and be licensed, if they have a licensing board in that state. So, for
Well,
example,
just
I've got one in Texas as well as Maryland, and I had to do the requirements for each of those states.
of course,
Mike, go ahead.
if I may, so Louisiana, we have
Oh,
PE licensing. It's just we didn't have a lot of professional engineers. Like it just wasn't a lot of people weren't getting their engineering
mm,
licenses there. And I know the process. So they call it reciprocity, and that's when
mhm,
you're applying for the pretty much the license in different states. But the good thing is you do not have to retake the test, right? And just another point of to note is that in California, for electrical engineering, I keep saying electrical, you only need 24 months or 2 years of experience of they call it verifiable experience. Whereas most states I found is 4 years. So Louisiana was definitely 4 years of verifiable experience. And
mm.
right now California is 2 years. So that was a great benefit as well.
Oh, that is good. It's good to know.
Mechanical is four, so I guess it's
Mechanical is,
different for each discipline.
yeah, I believe it's
I'll
also,
also say that the California test is generally more stringent than the other states. So there's a lot more reciprocity where usually it'll hold or be easy to transfer to other states, more so than the other direction.
great. Let me ask now, how often or when have you last used your PE seal? And to explain for everybody, once you have that title, you then have a seal, I'm old school, so an actual stamp, but now everything is digital for signing documents. Do you remember the first time you got to use your credentials, and how often do you use those? Cheyenne, I know you gave me an answer earlier, so I'll let you answer first.
Yeah, I had mentioned that I've been licensed for over 3 years now and used my it's a electronic in this case seal for the first time earlier this year. So that was super exciting, but it was a long time coming. So I think that speaks to just how infrequently I use my seal, largely because I'm supporting project managers and design managers who are the ones stamping plans and specs and things of specifications and things like that. So my day for more frequent use will come, but right now it's pretty infrequent.
Okay. And Oren?
I don't think I've ever used it. So it's been 11 years I've been at the lab now. So we're on the owner side now.
Mm,
So we hire other consultants to do design, and I sort of check that work. So I'm not legally responsible for the design. We hire that out. The person who's legally responsible stamps it. And that's usually one person on a team. So that's why when I was a consultant too, I was a lot younger, and uh, the principal above me was the one stamping. So I
okay.
have not, I do have the physical stamp though. And yeah, I have it, I think, in my desk right here.
Yes. All right. Good. And then, Michael, I know yours is coming, so you'll
Yes.
hopefully get an opportunity there. What advice would you give someone who, and I think most of our audience is in school. I'm not sure how many are in the workforce right now. I can't quite see all the names. Um, but what advice would you give someone who's beginning this journey of the application process, or what did you wish you had known when you started the application process?
Okay, so I guess I'll take it since I'm the newest PE, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, Make it known early on in your career from the perspective of I had to reach back to supervisors from years ago who um, may not have realized that I was pursuing a PE, right? And just letting them know that, hey, look, I'm pursuing a PE, even though it's day one. I may be here for the next 4 years, but I want to let you know one day I'm going to tap you on the shoulder and ask you for a recommendation, right? And make sure they check off that they're your supervisor. So in my career, I've worked with plenty of engineers who have volunteered. Hey, Mike, whenever you take your PE, please let me be one of your references. I'm like, great, fantastic. I would love to have you as a reference. But when you actually apply, they want a supervisor or the engineer of record or in charge to sign off on that work experience. So, I mean, I ended up having to get, instead of 4 recommendations, I had to reach out to 3 supervisors. So I have a total of 7 recommendations for my application. All I needed was 4, but the 4 that I had weren't supervisors. So they made me go back out, reach out, which I was grateful that these supervisors were kind enough to still do this. So, and that goes back to don't burn any bridges, right? So even if you're changing companies, make sure you do so with giving a 2 to 3 week notice, if not a 4 week notice, depending on what type of activities you're working on. But I would definitely say, and also lastly, I was surprised at how management within WSP, my coworkers, how much support and love I received during the time of studying. I mean, I had people willing to step in and take over some task if they knew I was studying that week or the week I took the test. My company allowed me to take off from work without having using PTO to take the exam. So it was a lot of support. And I wouldn't have been able to receive that support if they didn't know the path that I was on. So again, just make it known as soon as possible to those in your circle.
Good tips. Oren, anything to add?
No, not really. I mean, that's good advice to not burn bridges. You should
It's always good
not
advice, yes.
not do that. Yeah.
Cheyenne, how about you?
Yeah, I would say just keep the end goal in mind because it may get discouraging along the journey as things take time, or you may have to take a certain exam a couple of times. So just try not to lose hope in the process and keep a positive mindset. I do know, as one example, I've heard of some maybe staffing shortages at the California agencies, so people have to wait 6 to 9 to 12 months to get their application processed. I hope some of that has been resolved, but sometimes there's forces outside of your control that may extend a timeline that you're not anticipating as you embark on this process.
Oh,
I
that's a good point.
Yeah, I'll note that on the references thing, I switched jobs pretty early out of school. So in where that ended up in my timeline is I needed a reference from my first job in order to not wait another year to apply. So I went back to my supervisor at the previous firm to ask if he would be willing to serve as my reference. He agreed, but due to some challenges in our relationship, he neglected to inform me that he was checking the box on the application that said he felt that I would not be a good licensed engineer. So I get a application denial note from the board because this previous supervisor felt the need to not communicate me with directly that he was going to check a no box on the application. So that was a huge blow to me because I'm really excited. I'm on this journey to become a licensed engineer, and someone I thought I had trusted did not do me a favor in the application process. So, long story short, I think there's hiccups that may come up as you're embarking on this process, but don't get discouraged and keep the end goal in mind, and it'll all work out in the end.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like that was very challenging, so appreciate that being open and vulnerable that way. You brought up some good points. One, for those who may not know, the application process requires getting recommendations. So one of the things that I would suggest is be early when you're in your career or you're starting once you start your job is understand what the application requirements are so that you can go through the next 2 to 4 years keeping those requirements in mind. And as we've heard here, those relationships are important. And there's a community because all of us who have gone through the PE, we know the process. We understand the challenges and the struggles of studying for those exams. So we're supportive of each other. And it's you may take a test more than once, so that happens. There's a question in the chat. I'm going to state the question here, and this is a mechanical question, Oren, for you. What real-world project experience most strongly correlates with passing each mechanical PE depth module? Are there depth modules under the PE?
I think maybe that's like in reference to the different chapters. I mean it's been a while, so I don't remember
Okay.
exactly how that test is split up. There's just one big 8-hour test, and it does have different sections in it, I believe.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, they might maybe they're called modules now. Um, they're mostly pretty applicable to my career path, which was in HVAC. It touches into some plumbing things. It gets into some motor stuff. I do remember there was a lot of like system infrastructure stuff around like gas piping. So if you were to work for PG&E and lay out gas piping distributed around the city, there were some questions related to that, which didn't particularly pertain to my job. So there's some overlap of things that are not applicable, but for the most part, it was pretty focused on my job and what I needed to do, and you know, it was a good fit. It made sense that that was a
Yeah.
test I needed to take.
I think that you bring up a good point there or highlight something is the FE is going to cover across disciplines, and then the discipline specific exam is going to cover that discipline. But even within a discipline, there are a lot of subtopics, and you're still going to cover a spectrum. So maybe, Michael, if you've done this most recently, you might have a good example, but Cheyenne, you can also speak to this. Um, if you're early in your career, you're more likely to touch different aspects within your discipline. The longer you wait, you tend to be more specialized, and you may not remember or have kind of like that day-to-day experience on like for civil, if you're doing water and wastewater, you may not be involved in transportation as much, but you still have to cover transportation on the exam. And Cheyenne, can you talk a little bit about thinking through the exam and kind of what aspects are you're using now?
Yeah, and I'll speak to the 8-hour exam specifically, and it
Mhm.
might have changed, but at the time I took it, it was the first 4-hour block in the morning covered various elements of civil engineering. So it was some fluid mechanic type questions, some traffic questions, maybe even some environmental questions, some construction questions, and then the afternoon you could pick which module you wanted to specialize in. So I picked maybe the water resources one because I felt like that's where I had the strongest background and wanted to just increase my odds to the extent that I could. And all of that was pretty related to not only the coursework I had done in college, but also my day-to-day work at my consulting firm with sizing pipes, sizing pumps, just those sort of calculations, a little bit of surveying, how you lay out certain elements, things of that nature. So it was pretty aligned with my educational background, but also my work background as well.
Okay, thank you. Michael, how about you?
Yeah, so I think electrical, and I speak for electrical, it touches so much. So one of the things on the exam that I just had never looked into was from mechanical perspective, motors, right? So sizing a synchronous motor versus an induction motor, which I didn't know the difference until I started studying for this test. But from an electrical perspective, I need to know what size cable needs to feed these different motors. And you have an inrush current, which you have to calculate that. So we had calculations involved. And also it was pretty heavy on the National Electric Code. So the code books are very important because again, this test is to ensure that you are safe to the public and you're not going to design or recommend something that could damage property or harm somebody going forward. And for electrical, it's kind of broken up into like power, and power is substation. So the receptacles in your homes, lighting, things of that nature. And then electronics is another aspect of electrical engineering as well. And for my test, similar, the first 4 hours was very, a lot of code related questions. And they do give you access to electronic code book that you can kind of flip through, but you have to be familiar. If you're going in there fresh and you're trying to use a control F and find something in a code book, you don't have enough time to do that. So just making sure you're familiar with the various code books for your engineering discipline is very helpful so you can move through those books pretty quickly. But at the end of the day, they're really about safety. They want to make sure that when you call yourself an engineer, you can operate safely and ensure that you're following the various codes and standards that have been created and designed.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. There's another good question in the chat about grad school versus the PE. So, did you guys make a decision on going to grad school? And was it an either or an and, or how did you make that process? Oren?
Yeah, so this differs a lot by discipline. I know like structural, for example, is definitely need. I think they need. Well, I won't speak for Cheyenne, but mechanically, bachelor pretty much does it in the industry I'm in. Having more education's always better, but bachelor is kind of most of the way there. And then, yeah, there's not really much of an impact on the PE as far as that goes. Um, Again, it depends on the industry you're going into, but if you like trying to do an HVAC plumbing thing like myself, PE is going to be more important actually than masters.
Thank you. Cheyenne?
I will, similar to what Oren described, the advancement opportunities is going to come, at least in the nature of consulting engineering that I live in. The PE license will give you more advancement opportunities than having a master's degree or PhD. I will note for myself personally, I knew I wanted to go to graduate school at some point, wasn't ready to go right out of undergrad, so worked a little bit, started the PE process while I was working, decided, hey, I'm ready to go to grad school. So I kind of paused all the PE stuff, did grad school, and then picked it back up once I was done with my degree program. That wasn't because I needed to do it to get a promotion or advance. I was just, hey, I wanted to get more education, but also I knew ultimately I needed to get licensed for my own career development. I have colleagues that have master's degrees, have PhDs, and if they come and want to do design work and advance in their as project managers, design managers, and the like, despite doing all that education, they still have to go through the process to get licensed. I would say there is a benefit that in California, if you have a master's degree, when you start the licensing process, you only have to have a year of experience compared to the typical 2 years with just a bachelor's degree. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but it's up to you kind of what works best for your situation. But I think it's not a or situation. It's probably it's not a one or the other. It's what works best for you, but PE at the end is probably the best way to go.
Okay, thank you. Michael, anything to add?
Agree with everything that was said, and I would say for myself, me being very indecisive. You can go to grad school. I was still looking at getting my MBA, right? So if you want to be engineer and go on like on a management track, you may not need the master's in a specific discipline. I will say that I've had colleagues that it was beneficial that they were getting their master's in electrical engineering, and it made it easier to pass the PE again because they're back in that studying mode and they're back in that learning environment, and it just made it easier to get their degree. So it doesn't hurt, but definitely PE I think would trump a master's degree.
All right, appreciate that. We've got a couple more questions in the Q&A, not just the chat. This one, for the PE, does specialization impact fully your career? And this person is asking because they're interested in taking the PE for geotechnical engineering, but they also saw that there's a construction specialization. That might be either Cheyenne or Oren.
I will say, from the standpoint of getting licensed, there's just a baseline PE. I don't think it really matters which specialization you pick, just whatever you think is the best fit or you have the best opportunity to pass. There's separate geotechnical engineering licensures, structural engineering licensures, which you have to have a civil PE first. And then I'm not familiar with the experience requirements, but after demonstrating separate experience requirements, you can then get those special above and beyond licenses based on if you're doing really detailed, high risk geotechnical engineering work or structural engineering work. So I'm assuming your question was more about just like the baseline PE certification, but if you need to go above and beyond for those disciplinary specific licensures, those come with additional rules, including needing to have a civil PE to begin with.
Thank you for that. Oren, anything else?
No, I'm not really familiar with that particular discipline. The requirements there that differs for everybody. I mean, I'd say that this is a license, and that's a little bit different than just like say taking an academic test to prove that you like know the material very well. It's pass fail. You put it on your resume and then you kind of move on, and it doesn't really indicate that you like know what you're doing even, right? It's not an indicator of that. It's just something that the industry, the job that you want is going to require and needs to be put on your business card and your resume. So I would caution against just taking a bunch of tests to get them all done unless that's something that really interests you or that the career you're looking to get would require.
Okay, I think that's an important thing to point out because the PE or the license comes with obligations. We didn't really get into it a whole lot. Michael, I think you've touched on this a great deal. This is something that shows you have the credentials and the responsibilities for protecting public health safety of people and property. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. We've got a couple more questions and a few more minutes. There's one in here about for robotics students. So this, Michael, this one may be for you. When is a PE for electrical and computer truly required versus industry certifications? I know you're more on definitely electrical and power, so I don't know if you'll be able to speak to this.
Right. So just in my experience, just computers and robotics and that side of the business, you don't always need a PE. It's a lot of creativity driven, especially here in Silicon Valley. Just you guys are geniuses, right? So computer programming software, PEs just aren't required. What I've seen in my experience, and it's just a matter of doing good work and producing great products that can sell and can be utilized. So I don't think it's as necessary as on a power side.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it's also something that you would discuss with your employer to understand for the particular job that you're in and the career path that you want to see yourself on. You'd want to follow up and get some insights through them. Another question is it realistic to study for the FE exam in junior year and try and pass it before graduating, or to wait till after graduating and focus on the FE?
I'd say yes. When I was in school, there was a lot of I'll say pressure from faculty to do that. And I had a number of classmates who did do that, whether they studied and passed in junior year or senior year. I myself had too many things going on for it to be realistic for me, so I did it pretty much right after graduation. But if your schedule allows for it and you're hitting those key coursework requirements, it's definitely doable.
Anybody else? Oren?
Yeah, I completely agree. Get it done as soon as you can,
All
as
right.
soon as you feel comfortable that you'll pass it.
Michael?
I agree. My LSU promoted it as well. Get it done before you graduate if you can.
So what I'm hearing is if you can do it while you're in school, great. If you if that's not realistic for your situation, there's still time afterwards. But the idea is the soonest that it's feasible for your situation is better. Uh, Good question here. Can you still get a well-paying job if you don't have the PE?
If I may, I would say yes. And it just may be more of a managerial role. So we have within my company, we have managers who are very successful who don't have their PEs. They came in as engineers. They understand working human capital, if you will. So they're great motivators and they inspire the licensed engineers to produce the best product possible. And they do very well for themselves.
Good answer. Thanks. Anybody else want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You can definitely make plenty of money and have a very good position without the license. It's just a really great thing to have on your resume.
Yeah. Shan?
Oh, nothing to add.
Okay, great. This has been a great conversation, everybody.
So, Felicia, I just have a one or two more questions real quick in the last couple
Hmm.
minutes we have. Will companies pay for you to take your test, or do you need to first get a job and yeah, or how does a company go about paying for your exam?
I guess I'll jump in. You have to pass it. So once you pass the exam, you identify that you pass it, and they'll pay for your pre-course work, your materials, the test. They pay for everything because for them it's an advantage. It's an advantage to have you on a roster as a PE.
And when you're asking them about it, should you be asking your employer before you go ahead and go through it to make sure that is something they'll compensate for?
Yes, for sure. Even if you're interviewing, they like to hear that. They want to hear that you want to advance and grow and continue to develop, and they want to be a part of that process.
Great. And then within the last minute or so here, what about additional certifications like LEED or other ones? Are they required to have a PE before getting those? Do they impact your career or your pay? What other certifications do you guys have?
I'm currently studying for my PMP, which is a project management certification, which goes hand in hand with the PE lead. All that helps.
Yeah, I have lead as well, and I just passed a plans examiner test, so I guess I can approve permits now, even though I don't. Um, yeah, it's helpful.
Can you tell us what LEAD stands for those who may not know?
Do
Leadership
you
in
know?
engineering and I looked it up. Leadership in energy and environmental design. So for those who've seen like the LEED certification on buildings, that's what it stands for. PMP for project management, as Michael has just described. Cheyenne, any additional certifications that you've done on your side?
Yeah, largely related to a platform for pipeline condition assessment and manhole condition assessment for sanitary sewers specifically. And a PE wasn't required for those. Those were just added as a nature of the work I was doing.
And just to confirm, your companies that you've been working for paid for all of those for you guys. So it wasn't something you had to do out of pocket. Great.
Yes.
Well, to clarify, and maybe you guys can add, you paid for them and then got reimbursed?
Reimbursement basis, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I want to keep us on time. So, Felicia, thank you so much for moderating such an awesome panel. Thank you, Michael, Oren, Cheyenne. I think it was really helpful information. If the four of you guys would be willing to, no pressure, but feel free to put your contact information in the chat. I know if folks have additional questions, that way they can reach out to you. Also, to our students and alums, feel free to reach out to myself on MESASpace or Marvin or Danielle, and we can get you in contact with our speakers today. Connect with them on LinkedIn, and good luck on the rest of your day. Thank you so much to our speakers.
Thank you, everybody. Great questions as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, and best of luck.